Joshua was thrilled. His parents had finally agreed to let him use their secluded vacation home for a weekend party. After weeks of midterms and grueling assignments, he and his friends needed a break. A secluded house surrounded by dense woods promised the perfect escape from their stressful lives. He stood in the center of his college dorm, surrounded by the usual clutter of books, clothes, and gadgets. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages from friends eager to confirm their attendance. Joshua's best friend, Ethan, was the first to arrive. A tall, athletic guy with a knack for trouble, Ethan had been Joshua's closest companion since childhood. "Hey man, you ready for this?" Ethan asked, dropping a duffel bag on Joshua's bed. "More than ready," Joshua replied with a grin. "I've got everything planned out. Music, drinks, food, and even a few surprises." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Surprises, huh? Should I be worried?" Joshua laughed. "You'll see. Just make sure Mia and the others are on their way." Mia, Joshua's girlfriend, was the next to arrive. Her warm smile and bubbly personality made her the heart of their group. As more friends trickled in, the excitement grew. There was Tara, a quiet but sharp-witted girl from their English class, Alex and Sarah, a couple known for their constant bickering yet undeniable chemistry, and several others whose names Joshua barely remembered. The drive to the vacation home was long, but the anticipation kept their spirits high. The car's GPS led them deeper into the woods, away from the city's lights and noise. When they finally arrived, the house stood imposing against the darkening sky. It was a large, old mansion with creaking floorboards and a history that Joshua's parents never fully disclosed. "Wow, this place is something," Mia said, stepping out of the car. Joshua nodded, unlocking the door. "Yeah, it's a bit creepy, but perfect for a party, right?" Inside, the house was even more impressive. High ceilings, antique furniture, and a grand staircase greeted them. They quickly unpacked, set up the speakers, and began decorating. As night fell, the mansion came alive with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. Hours passed, and the party was in full swing. Joshua wandered through the crowded rooms, enjoying the sight of his friends having fun. Yet, amid the revelry, he couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. Maybe it was the isolation, or the stories his parents used to tell about the house. He shrugged it off, determined not to let anything ruin the night. The first sign of trouble came when Tara approached him, looking pale. "Josh, I think I saw someone outside." Joshua frowned. "Probably just your imagination. This place can be spooky at night." Tara shook her head. "No, I'm serious. There was someone standing by the trees watching us." He glanced out the window but saw nothing. "I'll check it out," he said, trying to sound reassuring. Outside, the night was silent. Joshua scanned the tree line but found no sign of anyone. He returned to the party, convincing himself it was just a trick of the light. But as the night wore on, more guests reported strange occurrences. Alex swore he heard footsteps behind him when he went to the bathroom, and Sarah claimed she saw a shadow move across the hallway. Then, the power went out. Panic set in as the house plunged into darkness. The guests huddled together, their earlier excitement replaced by fear. Joshua found a flashlight and tried to calm everyone down. "Stay here," he said. "I'll check the fuse box." Ethan insisted on coming along. Together they made their way to the basement, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The flashlight's beam cut through the darkness, revealing old furniture and cobwebs. They found the fuse box and reset it, but as they turned to leave, they heard a noise. "Did you hear that?" Ethan whispered. Joshua nodded, gripping the flashlight tighter. "Who's there?" he called out. No answer. They moved towards the source of the sound, their nerves on edge. As they turned a corner, the beam of light fell on a figure standing at the far end of the room. It was Tara, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. "Help," she whispered. They rushed to her, but before they could reach her, the figure behind her stepped out of the shadows. Joshua barely had time to register the knife in the figure's hand before it plunged into Tara's back. She fell to the ground, lifeless. Ethan shouted, and the killer fled into the darkness. Joshua knelt beside Tara, feeling for a pulse he knew wouldn't be there. "We have to get out of here," Ethan said, his voice shaking. "Now." They ran back upstairs, but the scene they returned to was one of chaos. The guests had discovered Tara's body and were in a state of hysteria. Joshua tried to take control, but the fear was palpable. "We need to stick together," he shouted over the din. "We'll find a way out." But as they moved towards the front door, they found it locked. Windows wouldn't budge. It was as if the house itself had turned against them. Joshua felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had brought his friends here, and now they were in danger. He had to find a way to save them. "There's a hidden room in the house," Joshua said, remembering the stories his parents had told him. "We might find something there that can help us." Reluctantly, the group followed him. They searched the house, moving from room to room, until they found a small door behind a bookshelf in the study. It led to a narrow staircase descending into the darkness. Joshua led the way, flashlight in hand. The stairs creaked under their weight, and the air grew colder. At the bottom, they found a room filled with old furniture and dusty boxes. But what caught Joshua's eye was a wall covered in photographs and newspaper clippings. He moved closer, examining the articles. They told the story of a series of murders that had taken place in the house decades ago. The victims' faces stared back at him, their eyes filled with the same fear he saw in his friends now. "We need to get out of here," Mia whispered, her voice trembling. Joshua nodded. "But how? The doors and windows are all locked." Ethan pointed to a corner of the room where a small window led to the outside. "We can break that and get out." They worked together, smashing the glass and helping each other through. Once outside, they ran towards the road, hoping to find help. But as they reached the edge of the woods, they heard footsteps behind them. Joshua turned, flashlight beam revealing the killer standing just a few feet away. It was someone he recognized, a face he trusted. "Betrayal," the killer said, a smile playing on their lips. "You never saw it coming, did you?" Joshua's mind raced. How had he missed the signs? The killer lunged and Joshua dodged, using the flashlight as a weapon. They fought, the forest echoing with their struggle. Finally, Joshua managed to knock the killer unconscious. Panting, he turned to his friends. "We need to call the police." Ethan had already dialed 911, and soon, the sound of sirens filled the air. They were safe, but the night's horrors would haunt them forever. As the police led the killer away, Joshua felt a chill run down his spine. Something told him this was far from over. The house held more secrets, and he feared they had only scratched the surface. And deep within the shadows, the house seemed to whisper, promising that it would not let go so easily. Joshua sat on the edge of the hospital bed, staring at his bandaged hands. The events of the previous night played over and over in his mind, like a horror movie he couldn't turn off. His friends were safe, but the weight of what had happened bore heavily on him. A soft knock on the door snapped him back to reality. It was Detective Ramirez, a stern-looking woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Joshua, I need to ask you a few more questions," she said, taking a seat next to his bed. Joshua nodded, his throat dry. "Anything to help." Ramirez flipped open her notebook. "Can you walk me through what happened after the power went out?" Joshua took a deep breath, recounting the events from Tara's sighting of the figure outside to their discovery of the hidden room. "We found old newspapers and photos in that room. They were about a series of murders that happened there years ago." Ramirez nodded. "We found those too. The house has a dark history, but we need to focus on the present. You said the killer was someone you recognized. Who was it?" Joshua hesitated. "It was Mark. As he was a friend from college. I never thought he could do something like this. Why do you think he did it?" "I don't know. He never showed any signs of being violent. It's like he was a different person last night." Ramirez made a note. "Well, need to speak with him once he's in a state to talk." In the meantime, I suggest you and your friends stay somewhere safe. The house is being treated as a crime scene, and we'll have officers patrolling the area." Joshua agreed, feeling a mix of relief and lingering dread. As Ramirez left, Mia entered, her face pale but determined. "We need to leave this place, Josh. It's cursed." Joshua nodded. "I know. Let's gather the others and get out of here." They found Ethan, Alex, and Sarah in the waiting room. Everyone was shaken but determined to move forward. They decided to stay at a nearby hotel for the night, hoping distance from the house would bring some comfort. The next morning, Joshua woke to a flurry of text messages and missed calls. News of the party had spread, and everyone wanted to know what had happened. He silenced his phone, focusing on the immediate concern, understanding why Mark had done this. They gathered in the hotel's small dining area, the mood somber. "We need to figure out why Mark snapped," Joshua said. "There has to be a reason." Ethan nodded. Maybe something triggered him. The house, those articles, it could have been anything. Mia bit her lip. "Do you think it's possible he was influenced by something?" The house felt off, like it was alive. Alex, usually the skeptic, didn't argue. "There is definitely something weird about that place. We need to dig deeper into its history." They decided to visit the local library, hoping to find more information about the house and its dark past. The librarian, an elderly woman with kind eyes, guided them to the archives. "You're not the first to inquire about that house," she said. "It has a reputation." Joshua and his friends spent hours sifting through old newspapers and records. They learned that the house had been built in the early 1900s by a wealthy but reclusive family, the Mortons. Rumors of strange rituals and disappearances had plagued the house for decades. The most disturbing discovery was that the murders they had read about in the hidden room were not the first. There had been other deaths, other tragedies linked to the house. "This place is a magnet for evil," Ethan muttered. Mia pointed to a faded photograph of the original owner, Eliza Morton. "Look at her eyes. She looks haunted." Joshua felt a chill. "We need to find out what happened to the Mortons. Maybe that's the key to all of this." The librarian returned with more information. Eliza Morton was rumored to be involved in occult practices. She disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and some say her spirit still haunts the house. Determined to uncover the truth, Joshua and his friends decided to visit the house one last time. Despite the police presence, they felt they needed to confront the darkness head-on. They arrived at dusk, the house looming ominously against the darkening sky. Flashlights in hand, they entered, feeling the weight of history pressing down on them. "Where do we start?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Joshua led them back to the hidden room. "We need to see if we missed anything." They searched through the clutter, finding more articles and photos. One photograph caught Joshua's eye. It showed a group of people standing in a circle, holding hands. In the center was a symbol he recognized from one of the articles about the occult practices. "This symbol," he said, pointing to it. "It's in a lot of the articles about Eliza Morton. We need to find out what it means." Mia pulled out her phone, searching for the symbol's meaning. It's a sigil used in summoning rituals. If Eliza was trying to summon something, maybe she succeeded. Ethan frowned. "And that something is still here, influencing people like Mark?" "Possibly," Mia said. "We need to find a way to break whatever hold it has on this place." They continued their search, eventually finding an old journal hidden behind a loose brick in the wall. It belonged to Eliza Morton. The entries were filled with descriptions of rituals and invocations, culminating in a final entry that sent chills down Joshua's spine. "Tonight, the ritual is complete. The entity has promised eternal life, but at what cost? I fear I have unleashed something terrible." Armed with the knowledge from Eliza's journal, Joshua and his friends realized they needed to perform a counter-ritual to banish the entity. They gathered the necessary items from around the house, using the instructions in the journal. As midnight approached, they formed a circle in the hidden room, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation and fear. Joshua, holding the journal, began to recite the incantation. The temperature dropped and the lights flickered. Shadows seemed to move on their own, and a low, guttural growl echoed through the house. The entity was not going to leave without a fight. Ethan and Alex struggled to keep the candles lit as a fierce wind whipped through the room. Mia and Sarah held hands, chanting along with Joshua, their voices trembling but determined. The shadows coalesced into a form, a dark, writhing mass that advanced towards them. Joshua's voice wavered, but he continued, focusing on the words of the incantation. The entity howled, the sound reverberating through the walls. Just as it seemed they would be overwhelmed, the final words of the incantation rang out. A blinding light filled the room, and the entity let out a final, ear-piercing shriek before dissipating into nothingness. The wind stopped, and the room was silent. They had done it. The police found them huddled together in the hidden room, exhausted but alive. Detective Ramirez, who had been skeptical of their claims, could not deny the evidence before her eyes. She promised a thorough investigation into the house's history and its connection to the murders. Joshua and his friends left the house for the last time, the weight of their experience hanging heavily over them. They had faced unimaginable horrors and survived, but the scars would remain. In the following weeks, the house was sealed off, deemed too dangerous to inhabit. The local authorities planned to demolish it, hoping to end its dark influence once and for all. Joshua returned to his studies, but he was forever changed. The memories of that night haunted his dreams, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the entity was not entirely gone. He delved deeper into the occult, determined to ensure that no one else would suffer the same fate. Mia, Ethan, Alex, and Sarah stayed close, their bond forged in the crucible of terror. They supported each other, knowing that only they could truly understand what they had been through. Years later, Joshua would visit the site of the old house, now an empty lot overgrown with weeds. He stood there, remembering the friends he had lost and the horrors they had faced. He whispered a silent promise to keep fighting the darkness, no matter where it lurked. And deep in the shadows, the house seemed to whisper back, a faint echo of its former malevolence, promising that it would never be truly forgotten.